Obsidian has said that they're taking the Outer Worlds 2 in a new direction this time, with design philosophies closer to games like Fallout New Vegas. In interviews, they talk about how they're really trying to push to do more in the Outer Worlds 2 in a way that they felt they couldn't do with the original Outer Worlds. They're on a time crunch and felt like they were limited at that point. In the Outer Worlds 2, they've heard the complaints people had, so they're making it bigger. That includes physically, with bigger maps that have more to explore, and that includes doubling down on RPG elements that allow you to make significant changes and customize your character. Along with that, Leonard Boyarsky has said they want to make the world a lot more reactive. That's one of my bigger gripes with the original game. I'll admit I didn't like the first Outer Worlds that much. The locations felt kind of placid, like they weren't alive and moving. To me, it felt like this facade, and like it wasn't something that really lived up to the Obsidian name. I've come to expect great RPGs from them after playing through the Pillars series, and I've loved their games all throughout the old days of Knights of the Old Republic 2, New Vegas, and so many more. But the Outer Worlds 2 feels like it has more potential, especially after hearing what everyone who has talked to the devs is saying. A big part of that is them specifically talking about looking back to the touchstones in their history, especially at New Vegas. A lot of the guys who made Fallout are still around at Obsidian. People like Leonard Boyarsky, who did game design, main story and quests for the original 2 Fallout games, and also Brandon Adler, who is a producer on various Obsidian games and did production on New Vegas. They've said that they've looked at the wide variety of choices that you could make in New Vegas, and they're trying to bring some of those big ideas to the Outer Worlds too. One of those systems is in the perk system, which has been widely expanded from Outer Worlds 1. The system is meant to have permanent changes to your character that aren't cookie cutter upgrades. We're talking really impactful perks that change the way you play in combat and change how you talk to different characters in the game. For example, you can get the dumb trait, which significantly changes the options you get during conversation, or the pickpocket perk that allows you to steal from NPCs. And those are two just very straightforward examples. Adler also talked about the factions from New Vegas and how they really wanted to bring something much more expansive in that vein to the Outer Worlds 2. That'd be huge for me. I've always loved going through faction quests in games by Bethesda, Obsidian, and others. I find a lot more enjoyment in that than I do in a lot of the main story quests for a lot of games. So if they can fill the world with meaningful quests that change the people that you interact with and the world, then they have me sold for sure. It's the choices that you make and the consequences of those choices that really make me feel immersed in various worlds. Leonard Boyarsky said in interviews about the Outer Worlds 2, this is something they've heavily focused on compared to the first game. Part of the reason that I was so hard on the original Outer Worlds is because when I get into an Obsidian game, I don't expect average. I expect them to push further than other RPG developers are willing to go, even if that means the games aren't for everyone. There's a way you can satisfy the general casual RPG fan and also make the hardcore fans happy. And a big part of that is giving us the tools to make our experience have more depth. You don't have to force depth into people, you can make them search for it, and when you find those moments where something is much deeper than you originally thought, that's when I get those goosebump moments that make me love the RPG genre. Moments like Wrath of the Righteous, when you find out you can become something much more than what you started as, culminations of so many different choices that you've made, or the consequences of taking detours in quest lines and going further into that dungeon than the quest told you to go. Those are the moments that I live for in the RPG genre. One of the good things about the second game is that they've said you don't need to know anything about Outer Worlds 1 to get into the game. Obviously, there will be some callbacks for fans that did play it. The big message that I've gotten from everything they've said is that they're really trying to focus more on the player's story for this one. Some of the best gaming experiences I've had are stories in various games, and that doesn't always have to be stories that are presented to me as narrative. Sometimes those stories are told through the environment, sometimes they're told through characters and how they react to what you do, and sometimes the stories are created entirely by you and the actions that you choose to take. That's why I love some of the deep simulation games like Kenshi and Mountain Blade. Sometimes you just get stuck into a world because it lets you do whatever you want, and I'm really hoping that the Outer Worlds 2 leans into that a bit more, instead of doing what many people are and leaning towards accessibility and dumbing down for broader appeal. I'm really much more optimistic for the Outer Worlds 2, and I hope that Obsidian hits the mark here, because when they do, we can get very special games. And it won't be too much longer before we really know how the game feels, because it releases on October 29th of this year. I do videos on Western RPGs, JRPGs, and story-based games, so if you like that, subscribe. Thanks for watching.